The luxury starliner Celestial Bloom hung in orbit like a jewel against the dark velvet of space. In its grand observation lounge, a young princess of the vast Kelix Empire gazed at the blue-green marble of Earth below, her delicate features arranged in an expression of profound boredom. "It looks so untamed," she said, her voice a melodic chime. "All that water and irregular landmass. No geometric harmony at all." Her aide, a slender male with dutifully downcast eyes, nodded. "Their aesthetic is primitive, Highness, as is their technology. Their inclusion in the Galactic Accord is a formality. Their only exports are cultural curios and, well, soldiers." The princess flicked a dismissive hand. The subject of human soldiers was a particular point of contempt for her. The Calix military was a precision instrument of energy lances and gravitic shields, warfare conducted at a clean, digital distance. Human combat, from the reports she'd skimmed, was a barbaric affair of kinetic projectiles and crude explosives. It was messy, illogical, and deeply distasteful. "Speaking of which, Highness," the aide murmured, "your security detail has been supplemented by a local contingent." "A gesture of goodwill." "A nuisance," the princess sighed. "Let us see these relics." The human detail filed in. They were led by an older man, his uniform crisp but devoid of the luminous piping and holographic insignia of Calix officers. His face was a map of weathered lines, his posture relaxed but immovable, like an ancient tree. His eyes, the color of a steel alloy, scanned the room with a methodical, unhurried calm that the princess found insolent. The soldiers behind him were younger, sharper, but they mirrored his stillness. The princess addressed him directly, her tone laced with condescending sweetness. "You are the one in charge of these men?" "I am," he said, his voice a low gravel. It lacked the synthetic modulation of Calix communicators. How quaint. "Your people still use such organic vocal patterns. Tell me, do you find it difficult to adapt to a civilized environment? After so long in the dirt?" A flicker of something cold passed behind the old soldier's eyes, but his expression did not change. "We adapt as needed, ma'am." The journey to the surface was an exercise in the princess's disdain. She commented on the inelegance of the atmospheric shuttle, the chaotic sprawl of the spaceport, the aggressively varied physiology of the humans they passed. The old soldier, whom she never bothered to name, simply guided her through the crowds, his presence somehow carving a path without a word being spoken. His men moved like extensions of his will. The official state dinner was held in a grand hall in the former United Nations headquarters. The princess was resplendent in her bioluminescent silks, a beacon of advanced civilization. She held court, speaking of Kelix art, philosophy, and their recent pacification of the rebellious Glyph sector, a clinical, casualty-free operation. She assured her listeners. The old soldier stood at his post by a marble column, a silent, dark statue amidst the glitter. During a lull, the princess, emboldened by sparkling wine, drifted near him with a retinue. "I understand human soldiers are bred for resilience," she said, just loud enough for him and his men to hear. "A necessary trait for a species without proper energy dampeners. Tell me, do your medals signify individual acts of destruction, or are they merely for participation?" One of the younger human soldiers stiffened, his jaw tightening. The old soldier's gaze met the princess's. "They signify duty," he said, the word simple and heavy. "Duty," she echoed, as if tasting something bland. A crude concept when compared to Kelix's algorithmic loyalty imperatives. Our soldiers do not feel fear or confusion. They simply execute optimal outcomes. It is why we have never lost a war. The old soldier was silent for a long moment. "Then you've never been in a real war, Mom?" The princess's eyes flashed with indignation, but she was whisked away by a dignitary before she could retort. She fumed at the man's impudence. He was a fossil, a reminder of a bloody past the galaxy was evolving beyond. 2 days later, during a tour of a remote hydrological research station on the moon, evolution caught up with them now. It began with a shudder through the lunar rock, followed by a scream of tearing metal. The station's lights died, replaced by the crimson pulse of emergency beacons. Alarms shrieked in multiple languages. The princess's personal Kelix guards activated their shimmering energy shields, forming a tight, glowing circle around her. "Report!" the princess demanded, her composure cracking. Her aide tapped frantically at a dead data slate. "A gravitic surge? It's a signature of the Glyth rebels. They must have tracked us." From the jagged holes torn in the station corridors, figures emerged. They were Glyth, insectoid and multi-limbed, moving with a terrifying, skittering grace. They carried no glittering energy weapons. They wielded molecular slicers weapons that vibrated at frequencies to disintegrate matter. They were tools of butchery, not warfare. Bolts of crimson energy lanced from the Kelix guard's weapons, striking the lead Glyth. The creature's personal shield flared, absorbing the hit. The Kelix firing algorithms recalibrated, but the Glyth were already moving, closing the distance with horrifying speed. A slicer met a Kelix energy shield. The shield held for a second, then fractured with a sound like breaking glass. The guard fell silently, cleanly severed. The princess watched in frozen horror as her perfect, logical guards were systematically dismantled. Their optimal shots were dodged. Their flawless shields were overloaded by brute force, sustained attacks. The Glyth fought with a silent, predatory fury that bypassed Kelix combat logic entirely. Within minutes, her circle of guards was half its size, the air smelling of ozone and something acrid. A Glyth warrior, its carapace scorched but intact, scuttled toward her, a slicer humming in its claw. The princess stumbled back, her royal hauteur utterly gone, replaced by raw, mortal fear. This was not warfare. This was slaughter. Then, a sound unlike any other in the engagement. A sharp, percussive crack. The Glyth warrior's head snapped sideways. A spray of ichor painted the white wall. It collapsed, its limbs twitching. Standing in a side corridor was the old human soldier. He held a kinetic rifle, its design centuries old, smoke curling from its barrel. He was not alone. His men flanked him, their weapons raised. They looked different now. No longer statues. They were poised, alive, their eyes holding a focused intensity that had nothing to do with algorithms. "Fall back to the reactor vault," the old soldier said, his gravel voice cutting through the chaos. It was not a request. The remaining Kelix guards, their programming scrambled by the irrational combat, hesitated. The princes simply ran toward the human. The old soldier and his team moved. They did not form a neat shield wall. They flowed. 2 soldiers laid down a pattern of fire that forced the Glyth to take cover. Not precise shots, but suppressive fire, a concept foreign to Kelix tactics. As the princess was ushered into the fortified vault, she turned and saw the old soldier. He had stepped away from cover to draw fire. A molecular slicer hummed past his shoulder, carving a chunk from the bulkhead. He didn't flinch. He aimed and fired 3 times. The first shot was deflected by a shield. The second hit the same spot, overloading it. The third struck the Glyth in a joint of its carapace. It went down. The battle, once a one-sided massacre, became a grinding, brutal contest. The humans used the station's terrain, a concept the Glyth seemed to ignore. They created choke points, set crude tripwires with monofilament cord, and used sonic grenades not to kill, but to disorient. They fought not to achieve an optimal outcome, but to survive and to protect. Their methods were inelegant, improvisational, and terrifyingly effective. The old soldier was everywhere. He seemed to anticipate the glyph's movements, not through calculation, but through a grim instinct. He used his rifle's stock as a club when a creature got too close. He directed his men with hand signals and short, calm words. He bled from a glancing slicer wound on his temple, but fought on, the red streak down his face like a warrior's mark. Finally, with a last echoing crack, the skittering sound ceased. The vault door, held by 2 weary human soldiers, slid open. The corridor outside was a scarred battlefield of fallen glyph and broken machinery. The old soldier stood amidst it, breathing heavily, his rifle empty, a spent pistol in his other hand. The princess, her silks torn and smudged, stared at him. The contempt, the ridicule, the certainty of her superiority, all of it lay shattered at her feet, as broken as the glyph warriors. She saw not a relic, but a force of nature, a will that could not be programmed and could not be broken. He had fought a battle her civilization's perfect technology could not win, and he had won it with dirt, grit, and an ancient, unyielding spirit. Weeks later, aboard the Kellick's flagship Eternal Grace, the Queen Mother herself arrived for a state visit to offer formal thanks. The ceremony was held in the ship's throne room, a breathtaking chamber of swirling light and soft music. The princess stood beside her mother, her demeanor profoundly changed. Quiet and thoughtful, the old human soldier stood before the dais. Cleanly uniformed, his wounds healed, his posture once more that of a simple guard. The Queen Mother, a being of immense power and age, spoke of gratitude and alliance. Then she descended from the dais. The music stopped. The courtiers held their breath. She walked across the luminous floor until she stood directly before the old soldier. In a move that sent,